Welcome to Homestead Reptile, and today I have Grotesque and Voodoo with me, and I'm going to be showing you a comparison between what I would say a higher quality gecko versus a lower quality gecko, or a breeding quality gecko versus more of a pet quality gecko. So first off, we can look at these guys are two different morphs, but we're not going to look at their morphs. We're going to look at first their structure. So you can see Voodoo right here his head structure is not the best. It could be a lot better, but you can see his head is more of what I would consider a pinched diamond. His nose is really long. He just has a longer head structure. It's not as round. It's not as desirable for a lot of people. Now, let's look at his neck. So his neck is relatively flat, and his dorsal is just It's a very narrow dorsal. So I've seen worse, but I've seen better. So he doesn't have the best head, he doesn't have the best neck, and he doesn't have the best dorsal. So he has three things kind of going against him, just right there in structure. Body-wise, he's a leaner gecko. That's just kind of how he's built. So he's built leaner, and this is what I would consider more of a pet quality gecko. If I'm not considering what morph he is and what else he has in him, if we're just looking at the structure of the animal. So now we're going to compare Grotesque here. So Grotesque, if we can get a handle of him, has a much better head. So just when I'm talking about the head, I'm talking about the actual head, not just the crest. So the skull of this animal. You can see his skull is a lot chunkier. His nose is a lot rounder, and it's more of a squat diamond shape. It's fat and it's squat. You can really see that it's more proportionate, it's rounder, it's a cuter looking head compared to this guy who is, more elongated, and it's not a desirable trait for most people when they're breeding crested geckos. You can also see his neck is much wider, it's much flatter. His dorsal is massive compared to this boy. But that's a comparison just in their physical features. Now we can go to morph. It's not a fair comparison to compare a dark flame to a lily white that has a lot of other traits in it. It's just not a fair comparison. But we're just going to compare the structure of these two animals. So the only reason Voodoo is staying around for my breeding programs is because he's actually het for Charcoal Phantom. And he does fire up jet black, and he's really nice. So most phantoms just kind of have poor structure to begin with, and I'm working with a very limited pool of phantoms and slowly working in better structure. So he's just my beginnings of working with geckos like that. But to the average person, this gecko is a pet quality gecko, and most people would not be interested in breeding him, and he's about what quality you would get in a pet shop. And you'd pay around like $65, $75, depending on what shop you go to and what state you're in. It just kind of depends on the price. But he's more of a pet quality gecko compared to Grotesque. Grotesque is not a pet quality gecko. He's a breeding quality gecko. But you can really see the difference in just structure. Their physical structure, not talking about their morph. Grotesque has a better body. His head's better, his neck's better, his dorsal's better, and his whole body is just better. And now we have these two girls. So these two girls did not want to fire up. They were not cooperative at all. I'll post some pictures of them fully fired up. But this girl right here is from AC Reptiles. She is a soft scale. She's kind of unique looking in the fact that you think she has a poor head, but her head is actually pretty decent. She has very, very tiny spikes. But the skull of this animal is actually pretty decently big. She has a nicer, rounder nose compared to this girl right here. So this girl is what I would say that really pointed diamond. So her crests are really, really small, but her head is very elongated. So this is just not a very refined gecko. Each gecko has a different head shape, but this would be considered not very desirable. You can see she has a very narrow and long head. People prefer a short nose, bulkier looking head, kind of like I would consider almost like a bulldog. but you don't want to take it too far to the bulldog level. She does have a fantastic pattern when she's fired up. She has a nice orange pattern. She's a very interesting Harlequin, maybe extreme Harlequin. And this girl is just a Harlequin. So, like I said, she has a big head. Her nose is a lot rounder. You can see her head is large and the nose is rounder. She doesn't have that pinched diamond shape. And again, she's a soft scale that I got from AC, but she's a lovely girl. She's produced some amazing babies. Now, both these girls are a little different. So they're both Harlequins. They're both about the same color range. This girl fires up jet black. The other one's a little, not quite black, more like a dark brown. But this one girl, Pumpkin Spice, the one with the narrower head and the spot on her head, I would almost consider her verging on more of a pet quality gecko. She has a good pattern, but her head and her lack of structure just leads me thinking more pet quality or beginner breeding animal if you're just getting into the hobby. There's a lot of aspects I don't like about her. What I do like is, like, the pattern is nice. I actually like it. I think it could be really fixed and played around with more, but she has a lot of stuff that's lacking that I don't like about her. And I've been playing around with the idea if I even want to use her to breed with next year. I just don't know about this girl. I'll have to keep raising her up and see if things get better with her. I don't think they are. So, again, you can see with her, Pumpkin Spice, the one with the spot on her head, how the head is elongated, is very narrow. It's what I call the pinched diamond. It's very narrow. And the other girl has a more rounder head, larger head, and it's not as narrow. So I don't just look at the crests, I look at the head, the actual head of the animal. But you can see here, it's like that more narrow. You can see here, her head is a lot more, it's not as narrow. And this is what she looks like. This is Pumpkin Spice fired up. She's not a bad color at all. She's decent. Her pattern is awesome, kind of awesome looking. It's interesting, and that's what's made me hold on to her. But I'm not too sure if I actually want to use her. And then I'll show you the other lady coming up. But yeah, Pumpkin Spice is interesting. Her pattern is interesting. But this girl, she has a really nice just jet black color.